Welcome to Infinite Love Podcast. I'm Kate, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about forgiveness and what that truly means to me and how difficult at times it was to forgive. Because forgiveness isn't just about forgiving somebody else. What I've learned is the hardest part is forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself when you're allowed to take accountability for your choices and actions in life, or whether or not you avoided things in life. But truly going in and working on those things and understanding that forgiving yourself is truly a difficult process. I realized that it took me 30 plus years to forgive the doctor that destroyed my face during a surgery at the age of 2. But what I realized once I forgave him was the hardest part was forgiving myself for holding on to such anger and hate and resentment towards a man for so long. And that when I was doing all the inner work, realizing that this was all a part of my journey. Once I was able to accept me, accept how I looked, accept who I am, and love who I am, forgiving myself was so difficult because to me, it felt like I wasted so many years on such volatile feelings, on such negativity. But in the end, I realized that I'm human and that the hardest part was really just forgiving myself and letting it all go. And later on down the line, I found that forgiveness is very freeing because once I started forgiving myself for my past, for my choices, for my running, for my avoidance, for my feelings, it wasn't until then that I started seeing growth and my mindset shifting. And I was much happier living this new life with these new feelings. I started to piece everything together when it came to forgiveness. I'm also learning that this doesn't just happen overnight. I mentioned in a previous podcast episode that triggers still come up for a reason, for a purpose, and that's to help you acknowledge and see that you're still holding on to something, whether it's pain, whether it's anger, it could be anything. And for me in the past, I would always become angry by this because I'd ask myself, what's the purpose of this? Without really looking into it, without peeling back the layers and identifying the core root of what was going on within inside of me. And that was the realization that I was holding on to pain. But, as I said in another episode, that anger is real. But if you avoid the feelings, if you run from them or mask them, they reappear in different ways, allowing you those moments to go deep within and figure it all out for yourself. It's not going to be a miracle where everything subsides and vanishes away, but at least you can identify what it is you're truly feeling and allowing yourself to feel okay with those feelings for the moment, and then work on ways to simply let it go. What I found worked for me was taking accountability first for my own choices and actions in life. But then what got trickier was when I realized the new feelings that were coming up, the more recent feelings of pain or anger or resentment that were now surfacing, and I was holding on to them because they were creating a domino effect. They were bringing up residuals from my past, old traumas and wounds that were triggering and now re-triggered by new traumas and wounds. And this was becoming very stressful to unravel and understand. And at times it was so frustrating or excruciating that I didn't even want to deal with it. But by not dealing with it, I was sitting within all of those feelings and creating these toxic, unhealthy patterns of thinking, creating illusions in my head that were far worse than the actual scenario. But subconsciously, this was my way of protection. This was my way of fighting through these emotions. I heard this the other day. To forgive somebody else is to absorb the cost. You aren't going to make them pay for it. You're going to pay for it on some level because you are going to absorb the pain of what they owe you. And for me, carrying that heavy weight was excruciating because for me, it triggered my bruised and broken ego and set ablaze my unhealthy, negative conditioned thinking, which created more grandiose, toxic illusions as a way to protect what was really hurting within me. And again, This stemmed from fear of feeling angry, which I did not want to feel. So you see, by avoiding it for so long and not allowing myself to really truly feel what it was I was feeling, I was living with the pain that was brought upon me. So in turn, I play a role in this too. See, once you start piecing together your own healing journey, you start opening yourself up to understanding piece by piece what it is you're going through, but truly allowing yourself to feel what it is you feel, even if it's something uncomfortable you do not want to feel, or you know that you do not align to those feelings. It is human nature. It is okay. And again, it's how we respond versus how we react. We are in control of this. Once we get a handle on it, once we go within and allow ourselves to understand, process what it is that's truly hurting us or impacting us. And so by me not allowing myself to feel those feelings, I was already creating this darkness within me, which then meant that I was just living in darkness over and over and over again. But now this is on me. I can't always control how people will treat me. But eventually I can control how I respond and hold compassion and understanding of where they're at in their journey. Because sometimes it's not malicious what people do to us. It's rather coming from a place of brokenness within them on their own journeys. And we tend to forget that because we're busy looking at our own journeys, forgetting and understanding that everyone has their own journey and their own story, and we can't always see that. It's not as if we wear this on our chest that says, hey, this is my story, these are my traumas. It's not until we actually speak about them or go within or seek counseling or therapy to really work on diving deep within our own selves. Then we become more understanding and compassionate towards others. I can't control what someone says or does to me, even loved ones. But I can choose whether or not I stay in somebody's life for my own health, for my own benefit. And that's where it gets a little tricky because, for me at least, that felt almost uncomfortable or selfish. But the only person I was really hurting by sticking around was my own self because I was allowing the pain to continue. I was allowing the pain and anger of a doctor and the blame. All I could do was blame him. And I was allowing that to sit within me for years upon years upon years and never really dealing with it or handling it until I was ready to. And then once I was, I realized I forgive you. I forgive you for what you did, but I no longer hold on to this pain, this resentment, this anger towards you. I don't need closure with you. I just need to let you go. And that's what I did. And by doing so, I opened up more room within me to grow, to allow more love to come within. And this was a phenomenal feeling to know that there was more space within me to hold compassion and love and joy rather than hold on to the negative darkness that was lingering and attached to me. And it's not just about forgiving somebody else for what they've done to you. There might be situations or circumstances that were out of your control that you cannot forgive the other person for what they've done, and that's okay. What I'm talking about is forgiving yourself for holding on to all the pain, to carrying this weight that has taken you down for so long. It's allowing you to be free from everything and anything that's weighed you down, to allow yourself to make room for love to come within. And like I said, every journey is different. Every story is different. What may work for me may not work for somebody else. And that's okay too. I'm continuing to learn as I grow. I take notice and listen quietly in the background to others when they speak. Whether that's conversations with friends, coworkers, or whether that's simply videos on TikTok or podcasts. I listen and I use my discernment and ask myself whether or not that's for me. And if it is, then I go a little deeper and do the work within. And this is what's kind of helped me the last 3 years of my self-healing journey. Because honestly, forgiveness was, and still is, one of the hardest things I've had to work through. Forgiveness isn't just for the other person. It's really for you. I was holding on to all of the hurt for too long and needed to figure out how to let it all go without masking or ignoring it. Remember, universe has a funny way of allowing these feelings to reappear through different situations or people. For me, I don't want pain and hurt consume my mind, my heart, my soul, my entire life. I don't want to grow older living a life of bitterness, sadness, or even in darkness. I want to live a life of happiness, of peace, of tranquility, of love, because I am worthy of all of these abundances. We have to remember that hurt people, and this includes our very own selves. We're honestly all imperfect. And once we're able to acknowledge and accept this, as well as embrace our imperfections, we can then deal and understand and hold grace and compassion for what's going on around us, especially what's going on within us. Currently, I'm learning to allow grace for myself, especially with forgiveness of self and others. Like I said, the universe has tested me over and over until I was ready to face this next part of my healing journey. I was very aware in this journey that once I began to heal in areas, other wounds would come to surface. Some I knew because I was avoiding them, because I was afraid of reliving the pain. And others I had no clue even existed until I started doing the work. And yes, at times that caught me off guard, but I easily allowed myself grace to say, you know what? I don't have the time or the energy right now to tackle everything, because healing is a lifelong journey and it's not a race. There is no end game except for the fact that my happiness, my worthiness, my self-love, that's all that matters. So I had to remind myself from time to time that yes, I was doing the work, but I also was taking pauses because I needed to make sure I was balanced. I needed to make sure that I was also living my life and doing things for myself and not just falling into the trenches of emotional despair. Because yes, I want to be the best version of myself, the highest version of myself. But that also means taking time away from everything, meditating, doing something I love, taking trips, and finding the joy in life too, meeting new people, having different conversations, while still learning and growing. Because you see, once you start realizing that everything around you serves a purpose, it connects you. It allows you to go within and align to everything. For me, at least, everything started making more sense. The more I was giving back to myself, the more work I was doing within, the more grounding and balancing I was doing and putting my needs first before anyone else's, the more alignment I saw, the synchronicities all around me. I knew I was on the right path. I knew I was serving my soul's purpose. But what I did struggle with was, why was forgiveness of my own self in certain areas so hard? What I learned was, growing up, I was very trusting of others, even strangers. But then what I learned that deeply affected me or impacted me was, when you trust the ones you love so deeply, and those are the people that end up hurting you, that's when it's harder to forgive yourself. It's harder to let go. It's harder to release all the pain. Even though you don't want to feel it, you don't want to hang on to it. There's that inner wound within you that you have to heal. But how? And then I remember someone saying that forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes years. And that triggered me in a way, because I don't want to spend years feeling like this. But then I sat with it longer and I understood what he meant when he said it. It's not that you're going to feel it every day, but at times you are going to feel it and it's going to hit you and it's going to re-trigger all those old conditioned ways of thinking. And you're going to have to kind of fight through it, fight through those old patterns that you were fixing and replacing with love. And what I learned was, I sat in front of the mirror, and I did this quite a bit. And I'd look myself directly in my eyes and I'd say, I forgive you, Kate. I forgive you for what you once were. And I would list everything I forgave myself for. And at times I would break down and cry. Other times I would just sit and smile because I felt it. And I knew I was healing slowly but surely, but it still hurts. There's still that tiny reminder of what you once gave to others you didn't receive back. And that's where I struggled a bit with. And that's on me. That's my accountability. Because I put so much into someone else's cup and didn't receive it in return. with expectations that I would, and there lies my accountability. So forgiving myself would be hard because I knew in the moments that this would happen, but I still allowed it to happen because of fear, because of everything that once was, now is. And forgiveness makes it more real. And sometimes you wish it wasn't so real, but it's your turn now. It's your turn to let it all go and be free, because holding on to it only means you're holding on to the pain of the past, and it doesn't serve you anymore. But I know a lot easier said than done. So let me take you back to how I kind of broke it all down for myself. Well, first, I had to ask myself, what am I hanging on to? What am I replaying in my head and in my heart over and over and over again and reliving it? Then once I established this, I sat with it. I acknowledged it. I acknowledged all the feelings that came with it, which feelings triggered me most. I embraced it. I allowed myself to sit with it for as long as I had to. And then I accepted the situations that came with it. That was the hard part, accepting it for what it was, accepting the roles I played within it, accepting what others did to me, accepting that it was a part of my past that did exist, and that running from it wasn't going to help me. Like I said, you can only run for so long before it comes back at you tenfold, hitting you deeper and harder in ways that you do not feel comfortable with. The next step to my madness was seeing the good, looking at the bad situations from a different perspective and finding the good out of the situations or the people that cause the pain. You see, we tend to gravitate towards the negativity, the pain, the anger, the resentment, the bitterness. And obviously that wasn't working for me. So as I was doing the inner work, I was finding more joy and love within myself. So I was reflecting upon all the good moments, the laughter, the learning, the teaching, the unexpressed love that was always there, and holding on to that, holding that close to my heart and soul and replacing the pain and the anger and the anguish. Now, if you follow me on my podcast, you notice that my episodes are all labeled and they all tackle different topics. And obviously forgiveness comes later in my season 1. And this isn't by coincidence. It's a process of healing that I've endured. I couldn't just jump into forgiveness, step 1 of my healing journey, as it would not have worked. It would have been a battle I would have lost day by day, because even now I'm still working on forgiveness, especially of my own self, as well as others. But it's something that I hold more grace for than I would have if I would have began this journey with forgiveness. You see, everything is aligned to how it was supposed to be for me in order for me to do this self-healing journey. For once, I wasn't rushing the process. I was going with it and listening to my intuition. And just like this podcast, I had bought the equipment and sat on this equipment for about 6 or 7 months before even attempting to tackle an episode. I must have erased my first episode at least 6 or 7 times before actually committing to it. But I knew in my heart and soul I wasn't ready, and I wasn't going to rush this process. Because at that time I was going through so much. I was feeling heartache. I was feeling exhausted, run down, feeling like I was losing my marbles, honestly. Between my self-healing journey, my spiritual journey, my work, my coaching, my creative side, keeping up with TikTok, and expressing myself through writing while still trying to live a life, I was very off balance. So I had to make sure that I went within, and I kind of shut myself away from the world for a while, but I needed to. I needed to just be alone and figure this out because I was committed to myself. For once in my 40 plus years, I was committed to myself because I knew I was worth it. So because of all of this, the stages I went through, I was able to get to a place where I could look at the positive side, reflect upon the positive moments of these situations that triggered me, that broke me, that left me feeling all these feelings I did not align to anymore. And this allowed me to bring more joy and love into my own self. And I could appreciate that more. And slowly but surely my mindset was shifting and it wasn't so negative or toxic. And by that I mean I was waking up daily, fighting these emotions. I could be making cereal and all of a sudden these memories would come back into my head and I was reliving the painful moments and then creating these darker illusions out of them. And by focusing more on the positive, everything kind of shifted and changed for me. And I was no longer waking up feeling so drained or exhausted or angry, as if I was fighting a battle every single day. And this stemmed from 40 years of silencing myself, not just one moment that may have happened in my recent past, but over a long period of time, me silencing myself was creating these barriers and walls. And I was staying stuck in the darkness of the triggers, creating these darker illusions that did not exist. But my mind wanted to protect me. So fast forward, now in any situation, if I feel a trigger, I reflect right away. I reflect on the good moments. What did I learn from this? What can I take away from this? And then I move forward. And this has allowed me to let go of a lot of my past. A lot of the moments, the memories, the pains, the triggers that I held on to for so long that wasn't necessary. This has allowed me to forgive myself, not fully or completely, but slowly but surely forgive myself in certain areas. And this stems from taking accountability on my part, not allowing my ego to take over and put myself on a pedestal and think that I did no wrong. Because again, I know I'm imperfect, but it's embracing my imperfections and allowing space and grace for myself to know that I'm human and I'm still going to make mistakes. But as long as I'm learning and trying to put my best foot forward each day, that's all I can do. And if people expect more of me, well, that's on them for holding expectations. I am going to try my best. That's all I can do. So right now I'm slowly but surely learning to retrust in myself that I will surrender and let go of everything when I am ready to. Because in the end, forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about your own self. It's about letting go and setting yourself free from the pain, the anguish, the sorrow, the madness that lives within inside you. Because for me, I rather live a life of happiness, of joy, of positivity, of growth. I like to see the best in people and situations in life. Because in the end, at the end of the day, I only have myself, my accountability for the choices I made that day. So I choose no longer to live in the darkness, to live in the regret, to live in the resentment, to hold on to such pain, especially if I was a part of that pain, because it doesn't serve me anymore. It doesn't help me put my best foot forward. It doesn't help me shine. And all I want is true happiness for myself, for others, for whatever endeavors they may be on in their journey, for my own journey. Happiness is key. I want to know that I lived a full life and lived with happiness rather than repeat the cycles of darkness and sadness that I have been living. So that's why I decided to take on this self-healing journey, because what I was doing in the past wasn't clearly working for me and I no longer aligned to it. I wanted more for myself because I knew I was worthy of it. And yes, this all took time. This all took healing. This all took work. But I had the patience and the courage and the fire and the resilience inside of me to know that I am damn worthy of it all. It just took me a long time to get there, and maybe a couple detours and bumps on my road, but I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything about my entire past. My surgeries, the people I've come encounter with, the moments, the missed out adventures, the lack of listening to my intuition. Because if I lived in regret, then I wouldn't be living in the moment right here, right now, present. So I choose to accept all that once was, to embrace everything that is, right here, right now, in my present moment. I choose love. I choose pure love. So each day from here on out, I choose to work on forgiveness. I choose to work on letting go, trusting and surrendering, not just with some things, but with everything. And as hard as that may seem, I know that I got this. And with that, I come to a close, and I want to thank you for sticking around for this episode of forgiveness, something that is truly a huge chapter in my life that I'm working very hard and diligently on. So thank you for listening, and thank you just for being here and sharing space with me. Have a beautiful day. And remember to make today yours. Make it count just for you. Not for anyone else, but for you. Find a moment in time within this day and celebrate yourself because you're worthy.